friends in a podcast. We're so glad you're here. We're your hosts, Natasha and Lindsey. Have you ever, as a child, or maybe an adult, avoided something with your whole heart?
Oh, 100%. I hated math as a kid in school. And so I would actively choose to avoid it. So growing up, our school, we did like our own self-paced curriculum thing. So every day I could go to school and decide what I wanted to start for my subjects. And I would always save math for last. And if there were opportunities to like leave the classroom to go do other projects and other things, I always did that because I didn't want to do the math ever. So I became really good at finding ways to avoid it. And I did that throughout my entire school career.
Okay, but I have a follow-up question on that.
Okay.
So if you avoided the math in school, did that mean you had to bring it home and eventually do the math and do the things at home?
Oh, 100%. And it didn't make it better at home, and I still dragged it out. So I just essentially lived in perpetual schoolwork because I would just make it last forever.
That's fair. Fair.
Not great habit forming, but
I avoided anything I didn't like, obviously. I mean, what kid doesn't try to avoid something they don't like? But one memory that I have is that my mom had signed me up for gymnastics and ballet, and they were on the same day. But I hated ballet, and that class was first, so I skipped it. I ended up getting removed from that class because I skipped it. The teacher was like, "You're not coming." And my mom was like, "What would you go do?" And I'm like, "I was on the playground. It's fine." Like,
oh my
so
word.
I stopped taking ballet and just took gymnastics, and it was more fun. I liked the routines of gymnastics. It was a little bit more poppy. I don't know. Maybe at 10 years old, I didn't know what pop music was, but it was just a little bit more energetic, I guess, for a 10-year-old than ballet. It just wasn't my thing.
I get that. I could see that. That doesn't surprise me. But I get it because there's just things that we don't like to do. Like I still like to avoid dishes, Like we don't have a
Mine is the
dishwasher,
laundry.
so
As an adult, I have a whole load of laundry in my dryer. Been there for 3 days. I know I need to go fold it and put it away, but it's perfectly fine, not bothering anybody in the dryer.
exactly. See, we all have something, so it's just that's part of why we're talking about this today because I recently was having this conversation. So I've been doing coaching with a friend of mine, and if you're not familiar with coaching, it's fantastic. I've really benefited a lot from having conversations with someone that just kind of asks you questions to help you figure out your own stuff. um, and so I asked my coach, I was like, I would really like to understand why I am the way that I am. And we were talking about cleaning specifically. And I was like, why? Because I live in a cycle. Okay. So you have to understand like cleaning is fine. I know when we have to do it. I try to do the best that I can. I have small children and a job and like all these things, right? So it's not always as clean as I'd like it to be, but I do my best. However, I also don't do my best because I have a really hard time with like there are days where it just feels really overwhelming because I don't know where to start. I look at all of the things I want to have done. And I also am not very good at like I know that there's some people who have like talked about how take 15 minutes and like empty out the drawer and organize it and then you'll feel better. And I am all or nothing. I'm not giving 15 minutes to a project. It's like I'm taking 3 days out of my life. We're doing this whole thing at once or I don't do any of it. Okay? So like I don't know, that's just how my brain works, I guess. I can't. So when I get overwhelmed, I see all of the things that I want to get done and I can't start any of it because it's too much. And then I'll just go sit down. So we were talking about this and I was just like, but why do I do that? And so she was asking me some questions and it came down to I don't I I don't like how it becomes overwhelming. And then I end up getting upset with myself to the point that I end up rage cleaning, right? Have you ever rage cleaned?
Oh yeah, my car.
My
It
car
just gets
too.
so
Oh my
angry.
word. Don't even get that's another
So
topic.
car.
Yes, my car, my house, it doesn't matter. I end up getting so mad I rage clean. But while I'm rage cleaning, in my head, I'm saying to myself, how dare you let it get this bad? Your house is filthy. How dare you let your kids live like this? Right? And so this like is playing in my head while I'm rage cleaning because I'm so mad about how dirty everything is that as I was explaining this to her, I was like, I don't like that. Like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to rage clean. I don't want to be saying these things in my head. Like, none of this feels good. And then
Right,
she,
right. I mean, you're not even at that point, you're rage cleaning and shame cleaning. Like you're shaming yourself in your rage while you're
oh,
cleaning.
yes. So who wants to clean when all they're doing is getting shamed and yelled at? Like,
Right,
not me. So of course I'm not going to clean because I know that like that's going to be my internal dialogue.
right,
And that's not fun for anybody. And I never like broke it down enough to like get to the bottom of it. Like, why do I avoid cleaning? Because I don't like feeling shame. I don't like feeling rage. So I just avoid it and I let it go. And then it's just been a cycle. So I don't know if anyone else has experienced this, but it was very eye opening to me because I just never understood why it was a cycle. And now I understand that there's like maybe a theory behind avoidance. And so she said, well, what do you want to feel when you're cleaning? And that was like another mind blowing question because I was like, I've never considered this before. How do you feel when you clean? Do people actually feel happy? Like, and
that's
so
fair.
um, it came down to, for me personally, I would much rather feel grateful for the opportunity to clean because I have a family to take care of, because I am able to do it. I know that we shared on the podcast a little while ago, but last year was a really hard year for me and I was struggling with depression and I didn't realize it. And so there were days I couldn't physically clean my house because I only had enough energy to like make dinner, right? And I couldn't clean up after dinner because that like it took all the energy to just make dinner. And so if you've ever lived through something like that and you've kind of walked through it and you might have good strategies in place and whatever, um, I can remember on like the days that were good, when I would have really good days and I did have energy to do things, that sometimes I would get kind of emotional, like, wow, I really could do it today. And I'm so grateful that I can. And so now that I understand why I avoid all of these things, I really do want to approach it with a different mindset and be more grateful. Like, does it make me want to like jump off the couch and go clean the bathroom? Absolutely not. But at least when I do have to go clean the bathroom, my internal dialogue doesn't have to be, you're filthy and disgusting and how dare you let it do this? But it could be, I'm really grateful that I have a home that I get to take care of my family in. And I want to make sure that it's at its best. And so that's my whole spiel on avoidance because it was really eye opening. And I just wanted to like share that if it could help somebody else because it's been mind blowing to me. So
I love that. I love the shift of perspective, right? Just changing a little bit of the mindset on what you were going into it as and making it a positive instead of a negative.
yeah, and who knew that something so simple could make it that much more enjoyable, right? Like I didn't know that. So here we are.
I love it. I love that.
What do you have any experiences with avoidance?
Yeah, I love your perspective of changing the mindset and not approaching it from a negative approach. I think for me that I've realized, as we've kind of been talking about this, as we prepped for the episode, that um, mine is fear based a lot of times. I avoid making maybe decisions based on fear because there's all of the what ifs. And I think that sometimes it's easy to approach situations in our lives and avoid them, not even approach them, but avoid situations in our life because we're scared of them. We're scared of what the outcome is going to be because the unknown is scary. And so it's easy to think, well, what if I fail? Great, but what if you succeed? And you avoided
Yeah.
that for a year, and now you don't know what could have been on that other road. And I shared with you recently a quote that says, what if it's not about making the right decision but making the decision right? And so
Mm,
what if you take you're at a crossroads, right? You could go left or you could go right, and neither of those roads is wrong, but you don't know if either of those roads are right. And really, it's up to you. And kind of going back to what you said, your perspective, you
mm-hmm.
decide whatever path you decide to take is the right path for you. And you own that decision and you make it the best decision that you can make for yourself. And you go into it with such a positive outlook that, yeah, it might get bumpy, but only good is going to come from it. You're probably going to grow. You're probably
Yep.
going to be challenged, and you can only grow if you're challenged. You're probably going to learn something new, and there's probably going to be some pretty cool gains. And yeah, there might be some pretty bad fails too,
Yeah.
but that's okay. That's life.
Yeah. And I think, as we walk on the journey of life and
hmm
we take those experiences, and rather than like when we hit the bump in the road and it's harder than we expected, or maybe we failed at it, but maybe failure isn't as scary if we look at it through the lens of I'm gaining information,
hmm
right? Like, because sometimes I think the fear comes, at least for me in my life, like when I've avoided something out of fear, it's because I was afraid of failing. But
Yeah.
if failing is looked at through the lens of, no, I learned that that didn't work. So if that doesn't work, I'm going to find something that does work, right? Like I've had jobs in my life that I worked at and they weren't part of my skill set. Like I just didn't have the skills to exceed at this job. Thankfully, the job helped me pay my bills and I was there for as long as I could. And I would get frustrated sometimes, sure, because I was like, they'll ask me to do things that I physically can't do them well because this is not in my skill set. Like I'm not crafty. I am not like that's just not my personality. I can't curl ribbon to save my life. Fun fact, if you're left-handed, apparently you can't curl ribbon. I learned
Okay.
that at
But can we take a pause on that for a minute? Because my entire life, I don't know about you, but my entire life, I've heard people say left handed people are artsy. And I'm
oh,
left-handed and I cannot draw in a straight line. I can't even draw a star, okay? I am not crafty. I am not artsy. That is
nope.
a lie.
I can't cut things out to save my life. If you hand me something with a pair of scissors and you say, cut this out, it will look like I would rather give it to my kindergartner and he will do a better job than I will, honestly. Like, I'm not good with
Same.
scissors, can't curl ribbon. Like, sure, I can be creative in a lot of other ways, but I
Same.
actively, here we go, avoid doing crafts and all of those things because it's not fun. It's not
No.
like I really
No.
try to like enjoy paint nights. And then there comes a point during like the paint night session where I just internally quit because it's not going well. And everybody has these like beautiful paintings, and mine literally looks like they handed a paintbrush to a 6-year old and they're like, here you go. Like, and then I'm embarrassed and I don't want to see people to see it, right? Like nobody wants to look at the mushroom that looks like that was supposed to be something else, right? And
Right.
so anyway,
Yeah.
I agree. I think that there's something wrong with that stat because
It's
that's
not
not
correct.
it's not. So
But to
rather
your
than
point,
feeling rather than feeling I failed at that job, I learned that's just not in my skill set. And I learned I'm probably not going to pursue a career working in that industry because it's not cut out for me. And that's okay. I'm okay with that. I've come to terms with that. And so I think that when we talk about failure, maybe shifting our perspective to gathering information, then it kind of lightens the load a little bit. Like it's not about, it doesn't put the pressure on me to like perform a certain way. It's helping me understand, okay, this works and I'm good at this, but this didn't work. And so I'm not going to pursue that. And
yeah, I think that's really good. I think back to a time when I moved back to Maine in 2014. I had very little direction to what I was doing. I had moved to Florida for 8 months, hung out with my family. I was working a job, and I thought, oh, I'm going to be in Florida for a long time. When I moved in 2013, that was the thought. Like, I'm gone. Bye, Maine. Peace.
yep,
And was ready to start over there. But after 8 months, I found myself in this perpetual, I'm not happy. I'm not satisfied. I didn't like the job that I was working. Um, and I just wasn't fulfilled at all. And I could have stayed in Florida and tried to find what was going to fulfill me, or I could take a chance with not a lot of money, not a lot of my savings, and move back to Maine. And thankfully I had people who had the buy-in, right? Who were willing to take a chance on me too and say, hey, come stay with us. We'll cover you for, a little while, until you can get on your feet. And I'm so thankful for that because there were a lot of unknowns. There were a lot of uncertainties. I had worked in ministry for 7 years and didn't really know much outside of that. I have a degree in ministry, and I worked in a medical office for 8 months and knew I didn't like that. The sadness, I worked in a nursing home, and just the sadness of it and the dynamics of the office were really hard and just very toxic in that environment. And so when I moved back to Maine, I was like, I'm never working in an office again. And I just knew that like long-term ministry wasn't where I felt like I was supposed to be anymore. And so weighing the thing that you knew for so long that you grew up in, right? And then the the thing that was so toxic that you just came out of, were the two things that were clashing together and you didn't know where to go, was scary. Like,
yeah,
and at that moment I could have chose to stay in Florida, stay at that job, stay comfortable in the sense of like I had a routine, I guess, or I could choose the unknown path that was a little scary and I could fail, and sure. But you know what? I didn't. I got a really good job. I built a career out of it. And 11 years later, here we are, you know?
right.
And I think that we can spend a lot of time focusing on the what ifs and talk ourselves out of anything that, doesn't feel comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
But what if we took a chance on the what if and got out of our comfort zone?
And there's so much beauty that happens in the uncomfortable. And
Yeah.
sometimes I think it's important that we're willing to sit in the uncomfortable to see the growth that happens because of it. Because if we
Hmm.
only stay where we're comfortable, we're never going to grow.
Yeah. That's so true.
And that's something that I've been learning throughout the season of my life. Like sometimes you have to have hard conversations with yourself. Like, where am I at? Like, is this, like you said, fulfilling, that inner desire of like what God's created me to do? And when it's not, then you have to shift gears and try
Yeah.
something else. And again, that's not to say that you failed, but that you learned this doesn't work for me. And I can think back to like my freshman year of college. So I went to a Bible school where the program I was in, we were assigned different churches to attend and given a weekend at like, so every weekend we would go and intern with these pastors and these ministries. And my freshman year, I was at this church and I was like, this really doesn't feel like it fits. Like I couldn't figure out what it was. I It was also my first experience outside of my comfort zone. I was out of state. I was outside of everything that was familiar to me. all the people that I was used to being around, and they did church very different than what I was used to. And they weren't doing it bad. It wasn't wrong. There was nothing inherently an issue with this ministry, but it didn't fit for me and I couldn't figure it out why. So I went to my advisor and I was like, hey, can I go to a different church next semester? And they were like, yeah, absolutely. So the next semester, they assigned me to a church in the inner city of Boston. And I live in Maine, like born and raised in Maine. Like there's nothing about the inner city that relates to me, right? Like literally nothing. I grew up
Not
with
at
more
all.
cows in my town than people probably. And there's more people in that city that are not even from our country that live there, that like, there's so many different cultures represented that
Right.
I don't have experience with that. Like, but when I fell in love with that city and found where I fit, and it doesn't make any sense because I shouldn't. Because if I stayed where I was comfortable or what I was used to, I never would have found my place. And I had such a great experience during that season of my life, growing and learning new things and understanding what it's like to work with many different cultures, understanding what it's like to work with people that are um, recovering from addictions and like all of that. And so I say all of that to say, like, sometimes you have to step outside of what you're used to and be okay with like trying something that doesn't feel good.
I agree.
A little
You know,
scary.
and I think that you can avoid stuff for so long that there will be physical signs in your life that you're walking through avoidance.
Mm-hmm. What kind
It
of
will show.
you want to elaborate on what that might look like? Like, what do you mean by it'll show?
Yeah, I mean, like I think it'll manifest itself in the your attitude, your conversations, your your desires to get out of bed in the morning. Like I think that sometimes that's where the root of our anxiety and depression can come from sometimes is avoiding things for so long that we just don't have the desire to do anything else. And I think that can be a scary place. I think that's a long way of avoidance to go. But I know for me that sometimes I have to check my anxiety, right? And be like, why are you feeling this way? And a lot of times it is probably because there are things that I'm avoiding dealing with emotionally and mentally, spiritually that I should be dealing with. And as we were like researching for this, I came across an article on the psychology group, and they go over some signs you might be engaging in avoidance in your life. And I was like, check, like as I was walking through these. Um, but your emotions tend to build up and you experience a lot of them at once.
Been there.
Yes. You tend to react to others out of emotion instead of responding thoughtfully. How many times have like somebody said something to you and you react and not respond? I hear that all the time. Like, well, you reacted, you didn't respond. And that's true. Like we do that sometimes. You experience a lot of irritation and annoyance, especially over the small things. The example they gave was crying over spilt milk. The other day, I literally had such a meltdown because I just felt like my house was messy and I was tired and I was doing the dishes and I was crying and I had someone over and they were like, "Are you okay? Like, what is going on right now?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm fine. I'm just very overwhelmed." But it was a
Yep.
bigger picture than that. There's a lot more behind the scenes going on in life right now. And I will say it was 100% of just avoiding talking and dealing with something in my personal life, and a decision in my personal life that I knew I was going to have to make. But instead of talking about it, I just kind of shut down over the weekend about it, right?
Yeah.
You might have difficulty identifying your feelings, not being able to put a fingerprint on them.
Oh,
Maybe you need to sit down and journal those things.
that one is exactly how I feel a lot of the time. Like it's really hard because I don't know what's wrong. I don't know what
Hmm.
it is that I need to say or what it is. And
Yeah.
oftentimes I need other people to ask me questions to get me because I find that I'm better with verbally processing. So if you
Yeah.
ask me the right question, it'll just come right out. But unless I like
Yeah.
unless you ask me the question, sometimes I get so caught up in like my own way of thinking that I couldn't tell you. Like, I don't know what's wrong. And
Yeah.
that's a really hard one for me, for sure.
I find myself sometimes asking, why am I like this? Because I can't put a fingerprint on it.
Yep. Yep.
Another one they said was you tend to panic or become overwhelmed when trying mindfulness or other meditation practices like prayer that require you to sit in silence with your thoughts.
Mm,
That one is hard. I definitely have felt at moments in my prayer life where I'm just spiraling, but I'm not actually praying. I'm just spiraling all of my thoughts together.
yeah. I found for me in this season of my life that because usually I'm not good at journaling because there's some sort of weird disconnect where like what I'm thinking and what I write down, like they can't, I don't know, I can't, anyway,
Yeah.
it's hard. But in this season of my life, I found that recently it has been really helpful to write out like and I think it's because for a long time I thought that journaling had to be like this like certain formula of like how you had to write it out. And so sometimes I have tried to let go of that and just be like, this was a thought I had, and I'll just write that down. Or like, this is like something that I'm struggling with, and I'll just write that down. And a lot of times I'm writing out prayers that I can't figure out a way to verbalize them, but I've been able to write it out and be like, God, I really need your help with this. And that's been really helpful.
Yeah. It doesn't have to be the Dear Diary setting. Sometimes for me, it's bullet points. Like,
Yeah,
I am
right.
bothered by, and then a list of things.
I love that. I think honestly, like, so I'm going to be transparent here. I always used to start out my journals as if somebody was reading them.
Mm-hmm.
And so it hasn't been until really recently that I've moved away from this idea that I'm writing it for somebody else and I'm
Mm-hmm.
writing it for me. And
Yeah.
that's really helped a lot because now I'm not writing it with like, maybe someday when I'm 86 and my great grandchild finds this journal. Like, you know, it's no, this is for me right now. And I'm going to write down what I need to like process. And that's helped so much because somewhere along the line in my head, I like, because I guess you like see it in the movies, like some old
Right.
journal tucked in an attic and they brought it down like, wow, look at what my grandmother wrote,
Yeah.
um and I guess in my head, like as a little girl, I remember like I would write out details about people in my life. I know the details of those people because I was living life with them, but like I would add all these like extra things because I was writing it as if it was for someone else. So anyway, all that to say, sometimes you have to find what works for you, and sometimes journaling can be helpful.
Get it out. Yeah.
Yeah.
You feel uncomfortable when others express their emotions.
Huh.
That
Okay.
one, yeah, that one took me a pause. But the way that I took that was that maybe it makes you uncomfortable when others express their emotions because they're able to. And because you're walking in avoidance, you're not able to. So seeing somebody else being able to makes you uncomfortable.
Huh. What a thought.
That's my POV. Take that for what it's worth.
I'm gonna sit with that one
Mm-hmm.
because yeah. Okay.
Yeah. You find yourself reaching for the same behavior to cope with stress and you don't feel any better after.
Guilty. I'm so
I think
guilty of
this
that.
next one goes hand in hand with this one. You engage in strategies to numb your feelings, like spending money, drinking alcohol, using other substances, or mindlessly scrolling through social media.
Stop
Guilty
it.
as charged.
Stop it. Why are you gonna call me out like that?
Lately, my mindless scrolling that keeps me up late at night is baby AI TikTok.
Stop.
I'm obsessed. I can't. There's just so many good ones. And I've already Googled how to make us a baby AI for our podcast. And I have the
Stop.
website and all the things. And I'm just so excited.
You did not.
Oh, I did. So,
Oh,
um, but I am
oh my
guilty of the mindless scrolling. Sometimes, like, I will find myself with the TV on, watching something and still scrolling on my phone, not even engaging in the TV show, then having to rewind and go back because I love documentaries, so it's something I'm really interested in learning about. But then I haven't paid attention for the past hour, so why did I even have it on? Because I'm my brain just isn't there to receive the information. And the last one is always staying busy. You have difficulty sitting still, are always on the go to the point of exhaustion where you are too tired to experience your emotions, yet never productive. How many times have you gone and just done all the things and you've stayed busy, but you never actually were productive? You touched a lot of things, but nothing ever got across the finish line.
Ugh. Okay. Yep. This list is really good.
Yeah.
How often do we do that though? Where we just avoid the things we need to address because, I'd rather be busy than think about it.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
And sometimes I think that can be unintentional too,
Right.
but most of the time it's not. Like
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
know, we know when we're avoiding.
Yeah. And I think sometimes it can look like being productive in one area, but not being productive in the thing that needed to be the priority and needed to be beneficial for production. Right.
Yep.
Like we talked tonight that I came home and I power washed and cleaned a couple of things and put my deck furniture out and got that all set up. And that was productive. But there were certainly other things that could have used my attention, thoughts, process, and that I probably could have sat with for a little while, but I didn't.
Yeah. Yep.
And a lot of just built up feelings and emotions. And I'm going to have to sit with those tonight. And I recognize that.
Sure.
But that's just an example of it. Like it was still productive, but there's still things that are lingering that I need to deal with.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So as we're kind of wrapping up this idea of the avoidance theory, as we're calling it, I just want to challenge our listeners, like maybe sit with that idea. Like, is there something you're avoiding? And if there is, try to process like why. Why are you doing that? And if you're not ready to do that yet, then maybe try to take some steps to get yourself prepared to do that so that you can grow and move forward and not be stuck like I was in this perpetual state of avoidance. Because there's so much that we can learn and grow from when we address these things so that we can become better.
That's a wrap on this episode of Two Main Friends in a Podcast. Follow us on Facebook or Instagram. You can also send us an email at twomainfriends@gmail.com. And as always, leave us a review wherever you're listening.